support this amended bill at second reading following much consideration and key refinement at the Governance and Administration Select Committee over the past 6 months. We believe we have landed at a good place, balancing both countries' interests as well as finally addressing a long-held grievance by many since 1982. The bill will restore New Zealand citizenship to individuals born in Western Samoa between 13 May 1924 and 1 January 1949, yet were not in New Zealand in 1982, whose citizenship was removed with the 1982 Citizenship Western Samoa Act. The Select Committee's intention is clear and explicit in our report back to the House. We are ring-fencing this cohort of now elderly people, possibly up to 3,500 people. Only those directly affected will be eligible as of right for citizenship by grant, not their descendants. Initial advice from officials indicated that if descendants were to be included, that could implicate over 100,000 people, nearly half of Samoa's population, having a huge impact on Samoa as well as New Zealand. By ring-fencing the eligible 1924 to 48 cohort, we have done something no New Zealand Parliament has done in 42 years since the Privy Council decision. We are acknowledging what many lost when the 1982 Parliament unanimously voted to rule those living in New Zealand at the time citizens, but not those living in Samoa and elsewhere. Again, it was a unanimous decision by this Parliament in 1982 to revoke their citizenship. In 1982, the legislation had cross-party support, with Bill Rowling's Labour Party and Bruce Beetham's Social Credit joining the Muldoon government to pass it. Mr Speaker, I want to acknowledge our Prime Minister, the Right Honourable Christopher Luxon, for being the 11th Prime Minister since Sir Robert Muldoon, but the first to actually confront this issue in a practical yet meaningful way. I want to also pay tribute to the support from senior MPs, the officers of the Honourable Nicola Willis, Shane Retty, Chris Bishop, Erica Stanford, our Department of Internal Affairs spokesperson, the Honourable Chris Penk, for his considered guidance, and the Chief of Staff in the Prime Minister's office, Cam Burrows. I also want to acknowledge Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Foreign Affairs, the Right Honourable Winston Peters, and Minister for the Department of Internal Affairs, Brooke Van Velden. As we all know, National opposed this bill at first reading, but some critical changes have since occurred. We are not only fine-tuning the specific intent of the bill, but we are now amending the 1982 legislation, not repealing it. Amending, not repealing the legislation was the explicit wish of our Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Trade. Officials advise repealing the bill, as continues to be advocated by the opposition, would have serious ramifications on the 1962 Friendship Treaty with Samoa and New Zealand, which among other things provides a simplified pathway to citizenship for Samoans. In short, a repeal would, quote, particularly impact individuals outside the group directly addressed by the bill, adding more hurdles for Samoan citizens to apply for or automatically receive New Zealand citizenship, wrote the DIA's departmental report to the Select Committee. By amending, not repealing the legislation, we have avoided violating the 1982 protocol to the Treaty of Friendship and potentially straining diplomatic relations with Samoa. Any amendments by the opposition in this House at the next stage to try to make it a repeal bill go against all the official advice. Frankly, it was highly problematic having a bill with so many foreign affairs, diplomatic, economic and immigration consequences being sent to a Select Committee as a private member's bill. It simply couldn't benefit from the usual vigour that shapes government bills from the outset. With that in mind, I want to acknowledge its sponsor, Green MP Tianao Tuioni, his work and his willingness to adapt it, to get it over the line before we lose what could arguably be our last chance to make a real meaningful acknowledgement to this generation. I want to also thank my government colleagues, National MPs Tim Costley and Tom Rutherford, and New Zealand First's Andy Foster for their interrogation and hard work over several months to help knock this bill into workable form. Can I also acknowledge Select Committee Chair Rachel Boyack. For me, this is not my first exposure to the 1982 Citizenship Western Samoa Act. No, my first exposure of it came in the late 1990s when I was a young staffer in the Jenny Shipley National Government, back in the 45th Parliament. As a researcher, I was assigned National's first Pacifica MP, Anai Arthur Anai, who's here today. I'd help him write caucus memos to his colleagues to consider this very matter. But it was hard going. It was hard going. Arthur, however, didn't give up and continued the fight and continued his advocacy for the next 2 decades. I ended up on Auckland City Council as a councillor with Arthur and I in 2010 as his benchmate. And he was still going on about it. He was still going on about it. Luckily for me, after last year's general election, I then effectively became his whipping boy inside the caucus. Arthur, I know this isn't all that you wanted, but you can take pride in what is being achieved across Parliament today. I want to also acknowledge National's Pacific Blues Chair and a member of my own electorate committee, John Luau. John presented a thoughtful submission supporting a third way with many pragmatic suggestions to help build political consensus. John's priority was to reinstate citizenship to those who were directly affected. Doing so, he wrote, will allow those victims to some dignity to this dark period of their lives. Thank you, John, for all your advocacy and for your friendship. Today, our Prime Minister Christopher Luxon is flying to join the Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting in Apia. Again, the Prime Minister can feel proud that since 1982, after 6 Labour Prime Ministers and 4 national ones, he is the one Prime Minister who is putting his support to this. As Deputy Chair and the Government lead on the Select Committee, I want to acknowledge the support and willingness of the National Caucus to reconsider this, the front and backbench. Thank you to my committee colleagues from across the House for listening to the submissions and making the necessary changes to enable this day, and the inevitable, dare I say, the inevitable passing of what will soon be known as the Citizenship Western Samoa Restoration Amendment Act. 42 years in the making. Mr. Speaker, I commend this bill to the House.
Dude, I can't believe he tried to go, oh yeah, sorry about the dawn raise, but actually Labour over there and the social whatever credit party, you know, they were part of it too. So, you know, we can't take all the blame. And it's like, no, just say you did a shit thing. Just own it.
Yeah. Well, yes, but Cameron Brewer doesn't do that.
So just say that, yeah, our party fucked up. It was bad.
It basically, like, I feel that he kind of like, oh, we didn't originally support, but now with you, can we get credit?
Yeah, it's like, oh yeah, that's the other thing too. It's like, we didn't actually support this amendment at first. We were okay with the status quo. It's like,
yeah,
dude, you slimy bastard.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's basically...